Jack Hagelin.
Joel Matuska.
Anya Thorson.
Samantha Sheridan.
Tanner Ransom.
Since 1900, the average world life expectancy has nearly doubled. This is according to Max Roser, who is a program director for the University of Oxford's Global Developmental Team, in a report, Our World in Data, in October of 2019.
Everyone in this room knows someone who has been impacted by medical innovation. Whether it means you broke a bone and had to get an X-ray, or you got strep throat and had to take penicillin.
There are many medical innovations that make the world what it is today.
First, we'll talk about anesthesia. Second, we'll talk about the invention of X-ray. And third, we will talk about the discovery of penicillin.
Then we will talk about chemotherapy. Finally, we will talk about organ transplants. According to John Avenstein, an anesthesiologist for Mayo Clinic, for the Journal of General Anesthesia, published on December 2018, states that anesthesia is a combination of medications that puts you in a sleep-like state before a surgery. Anesthesia is an inhaled drug that makes you go unconscious. Anesthesia was invented by William Morton and John Moran. William Morton was a dental surgeon, so he was familiar with painkillers that he would use during his surgeries. John Moran was a surgeon that was looking to team up with William Morton to create anesthesia. According to Michaela True, who has a master's degree in anesthesiology from the University of Arkansas, for the Journal of Medicine and Health, published in October 2017, states that anesthesia was first used at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston on October 16, 1846. William Morton and John Warren decided to use the invention of anesthesia on a man that had a neck tumor. Hours after the procedure was over, the man woke up, and then that's when they knew that the first procedure was successful. There are three kinds of anesthesia in the world today. The first one is local, which is just a small part of your body that goes numb, and they do the procedure when you're still awake. The second one is regional, and so that is like your arm or your leg, and it depends where it's at if you go unconscious or not. And the third one is general, which makes you unconscious no matter where it's at. Which one of these three people get depend on the severity of the injury or the type of injury that it is. The amount of anesthesia that you get for surgery depends on your heart rate and your blood pressure. Some of the side effects for anesthesia if you overdose are seizures, dementia, and sometimes death. Now that we talked about this discovery of anesthesia, we can now talk about the discovery of X-rays.
The X-ray was invented by William Rogington on December 8, 1895. That fact is according to Bill Wazala, who is a health practice administrator with an MBA from the St. Cloud Orthopedic Center, published in February of 2018. When William was inventing the X-ray, he was working with a cateteral braid tube in his laboratory as a professor. Before X-rays were invented, you could not find something like a broken bone or a swallowed object without being cut open. The first person to have an X-ray for a medical purpose was a young boy who fell while skating on the ice and fractured his wrist. When William Rogington invented the X-ray, he did not put a patent on his product because he wanted everyone to benefit from his product that he had invented. In the 1930s and the 1940s, many shoe stores would offer free X-rays to people so that they could see what the bones inside their feet looked like because many people were curious. The most familiar type of X-ray is one for broken bones. When you get an X-ray, sometimes you wear a lead apron so that protects some parts of your body that they don't want the X-ray to hit. There are many ways and many different types of X-rays. One type of X-ray is the CT scan. The CT scan can be used have the most radiation compared to all the different types of X-rays. A mammogram is another use of X-rays. A mammogram can be used to locate breast cancer. In 1901, William Rogington was awarded his very first Nobel Prize in physics. In 2009, the Science Museum of London was voted the X-ray to be the most important scientific discovery. Diamonds don't show up in X-rays. In World War I, people were already using X-rays for medical purposes. That would be like finding a bullet inside of a human during the war. The radiation some people think that the radiation is low, or radiation risks are high, but really the radiation in each time of your X-ray is not as high as what people think it is. So according to Cynthia Macau, a radiologist from Mayo Clinic, from an informative journal for Mayo Clinic published in 2018, states that the radiation in each one is low, so the benefits outweigh the risks of the radiation. In the world, there's 48 people on average in a year out of 100 people that visit for medical X-rays. Now that you have learned about the invention of X-rays, now you'll be informed about the discovery of penicillin.
Alexander Fleming discovered the existence of penicillin. This fact is stated by Maria Levanovska, who has a degree in biomedical science and is a master research student. This was published in the Yale Journal of Biology and Medicine on March 29, 2017. According to Saeng-Yong Tan, who is a professor of medicine at the University of Hawaii, published in the Singapore Medical Journal in July of 2017, Alexander Fleming discovered the existence of penicillin in 1928. Fleming was known for his disorganization in his lab area. This led to the accidental finding of what he then called mold juice, and would later rename penicillin. In September of 1928, Fleming left an uncovered petri dish full of infectious bacteria sitting on his lab windowsill. When he came back on September 28th, he found a fungus inside the petri dish. He found that the fungus was killing all the infectious bacteria that was inside. He later renamed this fungus penicillin and found out that he had discovered the first antibiotic, or bacteria killer. Even though this discovery was revolutionary, there were many shortcomings in his work. Two of the main shortcomings were that he could not purify the penicillin and he could not make enough of it to test it on even a rat. Howard Florey and Ernst Chain continued on Fleming's work. They were two scientists who were on Fleming's research team at the University of Oxford. These two scientists figured out how to produce enough and purify it enough to test it on rats. These trials on rats were extremely successful, and penicillin gained recognition in the scientific community. Early methods of mass production of penicillin were very unorthodox. World War II was going on, and many of the production facilities were caught up in the war effort making ammunition. This left them with not many options, so they started growing penicillin in bedpans. They soon moved on to homemade culture vessels. With a little searching, they found a ceramic firm that would make these culture vessels for them. In a few short months, they had produced and extracted enough pure penicillin to do the first tests on humans. The first few human tests were extremely unsuccessful. The first two in particular had extreme testing error. The first trial was performed on a woman who had a severe staph infection. She was given a high dose of impure penicillin and she passed away. The next trial was on a policeman who had both a strep and a staph infection. They did not anticipate the time that he needed to recover, so they did not produce enough penicillin. There was a shortage of penicillin. They collected his urine and extracted the already used penicillin out of it. They then re-administered it to the man. Unfortunately, they soon ran out of recyclable penicillin and he relapsed and passed away. The scientists recovered from these two experimental errors, and between 1941 and 1942, they performed 170 successful trials on humans. By 1946, the penicillin was widely available for prescription. This was due to funding from America and the need to cure soldiers from infections who were fighting in World War II. Today, there are many diseases that can be cured with penicillin. These include pneumonia, strep throat, meningitis, syphilis, and gonorrhea. A quote from Alexander Fleming: When I woke up just after dawn on September 28, 1928, I did not expect to revolutionize all medicine by discovering the first antibiotic, but I suppose that is exactly what I did. Now that we have looked at this discovery of penicillin, let's look at how chemotherapy was invented.
Chemotherapy was invented by Louis Goodman and Alfred Gilman. Prior to this invention, the only way to remove cancer was by surgery. Chemotherapy now gets rid of all cancer cells, not just like what it used to be when the surgeon just pulled them out from surgery. Sandra Pruthi, a medical doctor at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, in the report Chemotherapy, last revised in April 2017, states that chemotherapy was developed in World War II when there was mustard gas and we were trying to treat lymphoma. In World War II, when people were exposed to nitrogen mustard, their white blood cell count went significantly down, which then led to Louis Goodman and Alfred Gilman to introduce chemotherapy. Chemotherapy was first used on mice with tumors and then progressed to be used on humans with cancer. Chemotherapy started in the 1940s and in its early stages was used on Major League Hall of Famer Babe Ruth. Rick Altera, a medical doctor that specializes in surgery, in a report for the American Cancer Society, published in February 2016, states that chemotherapy kills fast-growing cells like cancer. Chemotherapy has many side effects. Some of them are it not only kills the cancer cells, but it'll also kill some of your good cells. And not all cancers are fast-growing, so it will also kill the slow-growing cancers. There are two different types of cancers, or two different types of chemotherapy, and usually you take chemotherapy with radiation therapy or with surgery or with both. The first type of chemotherapy is neoadjuvant, and that is if you have a cancerous tumor and you need to shrink it before you have surgery, and the second one would be adjuvant, and that is if you are done with surgery and you have chemotherapy to get rid of all the leftover cancer cells. Chemotherapy usually takes a round of chemotherapy usually takes 2 to 6 weeks, and most people who have cancer need about 4 to 8 rounds, so that takes about 2 to 6 months to finish all chemotherapy rounds. But that depends on the different types of cancer and the different cancer treatments you have. For example, when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, she had 4 rounds of chemotherapy, and they took 1 to 3 weeks there was one every 3 weeks for her rounds. And chemotherapy, she figured out that it does a lot to your body, not just kills your cancer and everything's fine. Luckily, chemotherapy is as effective as it is because she's now cancer-free. Now that you have learned about chemotherapy, you will be informed about organ transplants.
Organ transplants were one of the biggest medical innovations made in the 19th century. According to Charles Miller, who is a staff physician and enterprise director of the Cleveland Clinic's Transplantation Department, in the report Organ Donation and Transplantation, December 13, 2016, states that an organ transplant is the act of successfully removing an organ from the donor and replacing it into the recipient. The first successful transplant was done in December of 1954 in Boston, Massachusetts. It was performed by Dr. Joseph Murray. He later went on to win the Nobel Prize in Medicine for what he had accomplished. Transplants were tried before in the past, but were deemed unsuccessful due to technical issues such as connecting blood vessels together and just how the recipient's body reacted to the new organ put inside it. Other issues were that the recipient's body tended to reject the new organ put in it. They saw it as an intruder and they wanted to kill it off, even though it was put in there to help them out. Some of the solutions to help the recipients was having them take anti-rejection pills so their bodies wouldn't try to hurt it, and having them eat a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables, and overall just having a balanced diet. Some examples of some donatable organs today would be lungs, kidneys, stomach, intestines, bone marrow. Practically any organ in your body is donatable today. And one of the more common transplants that we do see today would be a kidney transplant. According to Manish Gandhi, who is an associate professor of laboratory medicine and pathology from Mayo Clinic, in their publication, Organ Transplant Process, on December 10, 2019, stated that there are certain factors put in place when considering an organ donation. And those would be the blood type, the tissue type, the size of the organ, and the medical urgency of it. Right now, there are more people in need of an organ than there are people donating. And every day, 21 people die just waiting for an organ, and there are more than 120,000 people on an organ transplant waiting list. Since 1988, in the US alone, there have been over 700,000 organ transplants done. And each year, there's nearly 6,000 living transplants done. Meaning, for example, a kidney transplant, the person would still be alive after the transplant is done. And anyone in here can become an organ donor if they please. It's a short, simple process they can sign up for online.
First, we talked about anesthesia. Second, we talked about the invention of the X-ray. Third, we talked about the discovery of penicillin.
Next, we talked about chemotherapy. Finally, we discussed organ transplants.
There are many medical innovations that make the world what it is today.
Now that we are all informed about the historical medical innovations, we hope that you appreciate how they have been today.
And as we continue to find and invent more and more medical innovations, hopefully we can continue to see our lifespans increase again over the next century.